Mistress burned pregnant wife's wedding dress, but the millionaire's reaction was unexpected. On the surface, the Donovan family was a picture of refined elegance, blessed with influence, success, and what seemed like an everlasting bond of love. Yet behind the gilded gates of their estate in Palo Alto, secrets simmered, secrets so potent they threatened to unravel every careful stitch of their perfect tapestry. It began as whispers, a rumor that millionaire Julian Donovan was entangled in a scandalous affair. Few anticipated how destructive it would become, culminating in the day his mistress brazenly torched the wedding gown of Julian's pregnant wife. This story delves into the chaos sparked by betrayal and an outcome no one foresaw. Julian Donovan was born to humble roots in a working-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Houston, Texas. His father, Richard Donovan, ran a small auto repair shop, while his mother, Pamela Donovan, juggled shifts as a part-time nurse at the local clinic. Even from a young age, Julian showed a spirited hunger for business, selling snacks to classmates and negotiating deals at neighborhood garage sales. Despite constant financial strain, the Donovans encouraged their children to chase lofty dreams. That unwavering support, coupled with Julian's fierce determination, would later propel him from rags to riches and place him at the epicenter of a seismic personal drama. In high school, Julian distinguished himself not just academically, but as a budding entrepreneur. He organized fundraisers for the debate club, ensuring he had a say in everything from snack sales to event advertising. When he was just 16, he launched a modest e-commerce venture reselling collectible sports memorabilia. The business started in his bedroom, overshadowed by stacks of vintage baseball cards and old sports magazines, but it soon amassed enough profit to catch the attention of his peers and even local news. This ambition fueled his acceptance into a prestigious business program at Stanford University, a place known for breeding Silicon Valley innovators. Stanford proved a crucible that refined Julian's ambition into a true entrepreneurial edge. Surrounded by sharp minds and disruptive ideas, he found himself exhilarated. He spent late nights attending startup meetups, pitch events, and leadership seminars. It was there he met Andrew Lockhart, a gifted programmer whose fascination with machine learning paired seamlessly with Julian's knack for financial strategy. The two envisioned a platform artisan link that would connect small businesses to a global pool of freelance creatives. Before graduation, they secured impressive venture capital backing, marking the first step of what would become an astonishingly rapid rise to prominence. Elena Garcia entered Julian's life on an unassuming spring afternoon during a campus-wide event highlighting eco-friendly initiatives. While many meandered by the exhibits, Julian was drawn to one particular display, a scale model of green urban housing. Its architect, Elena, an architecture student who championed sustainability in every blueprint she drafted. Their initial conversation covered everything from climate activism to philanthropic investments. Julian found himself entranced by Elena's warm, thoughtful manner and her unwavering drive to serve communities often overlooked by big development. Their bond felt immediate, as though they recognized in each other an ambition tempered by empathy. Born in San Diego to Miguel and Laura Garcia, Elena grew up immersed in a loving environment centered on community and education. Miguel ran a small construction company, renowned for its ethical labor practices, while Laura was a Spanish literature professor. From her father, Elena inherited a fascination with structural integrity. From her mother, a love for storytelling and cultural heritage. This dual influence showed in Elena's designs. Every building she imagined carried meaning beyond aesthetics, focusing on how people lived, interacted, and built memories within those walls. Julian, ever the strategist, saw Elena not just as a partner in life, but as someone who inspired him to think bigger than profit margins. Their romance burgeoned under the Californian sun, each date unveiling new layers of mutual admiration. Within 2 years of meeting, Julian proposed to Elena during a private rooftop dinner in San Francisco. A local violinist serenaded them under fairy lights, surrounded by bouquets of lavender, Elena's favorite flower. Tears of joy welled in Elena's eyes as she accepted, setting social media abuzz when word of their engagement spread through their Stanford network. Despite the superficial glitz, sprawling city views, and artisanal cuisine, what truly mattered to them was the shared future they had decided to forge together. The wedding took place at a picturesque vineyard in Napa Valley. Elena wore a custom-made gown by a rising designer who specialized in ethically sourced materials, aligning perfectly with her ethos. The dress, off-white with lace detailing, sparkled under the gentle sunlight. As Elena walked down the aisle, Julian felt an overwhelming sense of awe. Memories of that modest Houston upbringing rushed through his mind, clashing with the opulence of the day. Their vows captured everyone's heart, each word a promise woven from love, respect, and commitment to forging a better world. The day ended in celebratory fireworks, an apt metaphor for the explosive journey that lay ahead. For a time, life was pure bliss. Artisan Link's success soared beyond anyone's predictions. Under Julian's leadership and Andrew's technical prowess, the company expanded its client base worldwide. Elena's architectural designs caught attention for their functional beauty and low environmental impact, winning her accolades in emerging architect contests. They moved into a breathtaking home in Palo Alto, complete with an expansive garden that Elena tended passionately. Weekends were their sacred time, no business calls, no emails, just open-air brunches and meaningful conversations. But even the strongest steel can crack under unrelenting pressure, and cracks had begun quietly and invisibly. Those cracks materialized through Julian's relentless travel schedule. Artisan Link targeted new markets in Europe, Asia, and beyond, requiring constant negotiations and investor meetings abroad. Andrew advised Julian to build a larger executive team so he could focus on strategic decisions rather than day-to-day tasks. But Julian's controlling nature wouldn't let go. He believed that without him at the helm, deals would fall through. This tenacity initially won admiration, but soon sparked tension at home. Elena felt the weight of his absences, longing for the steady companionship they had shared at the start of their journey. Camilla Reeves came into their lives under the guise of professional support. Recommended by a mutual contact, she was a public relations consultant with an impeccable track record. She boasted an impressive Rolodex of media connections, claiming her father was a powerful diplomat with channels into exclusive circles. Camilla was confident, quick to flatter, and seemed to possess an almost uncanny knack for aligning narratives to Julian's favor. Initially, Elena appreciated Camilla's finesse. Thanks to her, Artisan Link's philanthropic initiatives and Elena's sustainable housing designs gained favorable press coverage. Yet an inexplicable discomfort accompanied Camilla's sugary words. Elena's instincts warned her about the woman's disingenuous charm, though she couldn't pinpoint the source of her unease. As Artisan Link's international profile expanded, Camilla's role escalated. She traveled with Julian to tech conferences and investor symposiums, coordinating interviews and social events that painted the company in a positive light. The woman's approach to PR went beyond conventional press releases. She orchestrated lavish parties, curated influencers, and made sure the brand's philanthropic gestures were prominently highlighted. On social media, snapshots of Julian standing beside Camilla at chic galas began surfacing. Although Elena trusted her husband, the repeated images of his interactions with Camilla chipped away at her peace of mind. Each like, comment, and share felt like a pinprick in what had once been an unshakable bond. Communication between Julian and Elena, once effortless, grew sporadic and strained. Their cherished Sunday brunch tradition was often derailed by urgent conference calls or unplanned flights. When Elena tried addressing her concerns, Julian would dodge the subject, attributing his behavior to the demands of a rapidly growing enterprise. He assured her that once the expansion phase stabilized, they could return to normalcy. The looming question was, how long would that take, and at what cost? Meanwhile, Elena busied herself with architectural projects, occasionally collaborating with non-profits that built eco-friendly homes in low-income areas. It was fulfilling work, but loneliness still gnawed at her in the quiet of night. Then came the moment that blindsided Julian. Elena discovered she was pregnant. The news should have been a source of joy and celebration. Yet each time Elena attempted to share this life-changing development with him, they found themselves caught in the tumult of never-ending crises, fluctuating stock prices, urgent investor calls, or sudden PR emergencies, expertly handled by Camilla. Days melted into weeks, and Elena's frustration grew. She yearned to see the excitement in Julian's eyes, to be folded into his arms, and reassured that, despite their busy schedules, they were still in this together. When Elena finally told Julian about the pregnancy, she had orchestrated a warm candlelit dinner at home. Soft jazz played in the background, and she had dressed in a sleek black gown that accentuated her natural glow. The table was set with their finest china, a testament to her desire for this to be an extraordinary moment. However, Julian arrived exhausted and visibly preoccupied. He explained he had just flown in from London that morning and had spent the afternoon locked in intense negotiations. Undeterred, Elena gently broke the news. "We're having a baby." Julian froze, a swirl of emotion crossing his face: surprise, awe, and something she deciphered as apprehension. In the days following her announcement, Julian's behavior was inconsistent. Sometimes he seemed genuinely moved, running out to purchase prenatal vitamins or reading up on nutrition for expecting mothers. But at other times, Elena caught him lost in thought, eyes distant. When she probed, he muttered about looming business deadlines, refusing to articulate his deeper worries. Elena felt an ache in her chest. Where was the man who'd once orchestrated a star-studded rooftop proposal? Where was the excitement she expected? She clung to hope, trusting that the chaos of the moment would pass. But doubt seeped in. Drop by drop, into this emotional vacuum stepped Camilla. The more absent Julian seemed at home, the closer Camilla got to him professionally. Their phone calls extended late into the night, with Camilla insisting that every detail of their global expansion be meticulously coordinated to perfection. People within Artisan Link started whispering about their close rapport. Andrew Lockhart, who had known Julian for nearly a decade, grew wary. While he had no concrete evidence of an affair, something about the chemistry between Julian and Camilla didn't feel like mere professional synergy. Tension loomed, palpable enough to unsettle even the most oblivious observers. Elena decided to confirm or dispel her worst fears. She planned a surprise lunch visit to Julian's office at Redwood and Finch, a renowned law firm where a crucial meeting with investors was taking place. Armed with a gourmet meal from his favorite bistro and a bouquet of fragrant lilies, she took the elevator to the 28th floor. Her heart pounded in anticipation, a script of how she would greet him dancing in her mind. Yet as she stepped into the reception area, she halted upon glimpsing Julian and Camilla locked in a disturbingly intimate conversation. She thought she saw Camilla's hand graze Julian's arm in a manner that felt uncomfortably personal. The sense of betrayal that coursed through Elena was immediate, as if ice water had been poured into her veins. Unwilling to create a spectacle, Elena backed away, her breath coming in ragged, shallow intervals. Adrenaline surged, and her grip on the lunch bag tightened. She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but her pulse hammered in her ears, drowning out rational thought. When Julian turned away, heading toward the conference room, Camilla lingered briefly, a confident smirk curving her lips. Elena's stomach twisted in knots. The moment felt surreal, like an out-of-body experience. She dropped the idea of surprising him, leaving the office before anyone noticed she'd been there. In the elevator, tears threatened to escape, but she blinked them back fiercely. Back at home, Elena's mind spiraled. The pregnancy hormones heightened her emotional turbulence, making every doubt feel cataclysmic. She paced the living room, replaying that brief scene in her head. The plausible explanations seemed inadequate. Was she overreacting? Could it have been a simple misunderstanding between colleagues? Her instincts, honed by the small personal revelations of Julian's increasing distance, suggested otherwise. Worse, she felt a new kind of loneliness, the dread that she, a pregnant wife, might be losing her husband to someone who navigated his world of business and PR as if she were the perfect accessory. That evening, Julian came home late, muttering about a post-meeting dinner with investors that ran longer than expected. He offered Elena a cursory kiss on the forehead. She yearned to confront him, but the fear of seeming paranoid held her back. Instead, she went to bed early, the taste of unsaid words bitter in her mouth. Over the next week, her mental anguish only deepened. She found dinner receipts from upscale restaurants she had never visited, suspicious text notifications popping up on Julian's phone, and a seeming avalanche of reasons for him to spend just one more night working late with Camilla. Unable to endure the silence, Elena finally confronted Julian with tears stinging her eyes. "I think you're getting too close to Camilla," she stated, her voice quivering. Julian bristled at the accusation. He insisted that Camilla was crucial for Artisan Link's expansions and global reputation. In a condescending tone, he accused Elena of mistrust and jealousy. Refusing to let him dismiss her, Elena recounted what she saw at Redwood and Finch, but Julian scoffed that she was blowing an innocuous moment out of proportion. The conversation ended in a stalemate, with Elena feeling more isolated than ever. In desperation, Elena called Andrew Lockhart to confide in him. Though reluctant at first, Andrew admitted that some employees speculated about an affair. He emphasized that he had no concrete proof, but he offered a gentle warning: Julian isn't himself lately. He's pushing harder than ever, chasing expansions and allowing Camilla to overshadow boundaries. "Be careful, Elena." The conversation left Elena both validated and terrified. In a single day, her illusions about her marriage and the father of her unborn child began to crumble. She realized she might be forced to decide between silently enduring or taking a stand to protect herself and the child she carried. Eventually, Elena decided she could delay no longer. On a stormy night, thunder clashing in the distance, she mustered the courage to lay everything bare. When Julian returned from yet another corporate dinner, reeking of expensive cologne and bourbon, Elena confronted him in the living room. As lightning illuminated her face, she told him, voice trembling, that they had to talk about their future. "I'm pregnant, and I want to believe you still want us," she said, tears blurring her vision. Julian stared at her, seeming caught off guard by the intensity of her despair. Their exchange was brief, but it ended in a promise he would try harder to be transparent and attentive. For a fleeting week, it seemed as though Julian was making an effort. He joined Elena for a prenatal appointment, read through pamphlets on healthy pregnancies, and even surprised her with thoughtful gifts. But Camilla's name still hovered like a spectre in their daily lives. Elena tried to dismiss her doubts, hoping that perhaps Julian's initial reaction had just been shock. She told herself that if the baby could bring them closer, they might survive this turbulent chapter. The illusions faltered one afternoon, though, when she stumbled upon an email in Julian's tablet, Camilla inviting him to a romantic hideaway in Rome, describing a private suite they could enjoy together after a conference. Reading those words, Elena felt physically ill. The message made it clear there was more than just business between Julian and Camilla. Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped the device. She reread the email multiple times, each phrase slicing deeper. There was no more room for denial. She marched into their bedroom to confront Julian, only to find it empty. Overwhelmed, she nearly collapsed onto the bed, tears streaming. Later that night, Julian arrived home. Elena tried to summon the nerve to confront him right away, but the pain was so raw that she thought she might completely break down. She decided she needed a plan before she hurled accusations. The next day, Elena booked a couples therapy session with Dr. Marianne Fletcher, a well-regarded psychologist in Palo Alto. She persuaded Julian to attend, hoping a neutral environment might force honesty. In the session, Dr. Fletcher asked them to articulate their fears and frustrations. Elena brought up the Rome email. Julian's face paled. He tried to pass it off as PR strategy, claiming Camilla was just overstepping her role. Dr. Fletcher pressed him on the apparent intimacy, but he deflected. The hour concluded with no resolution, only heightened tension. Elena left feeling a suffocating sense that she was rapidly losing the man she once adored. Unable to handle the charade any longer, Elena reached out to her parents. Laura Garcia, her mother, implored her to come stay with them in San Diego for a while, at least until she could clear her head. Tired of battling tears every night, Elena agreed. She left a note for Julian, stating she needed space to think, then packed her belongings and drove south. As she pulled away from the driveway, her wedding band felt heavier than ever, a symbol of a vow she feared was beyond repair. Her unborn child, however, fueled her determination. She had to preserve her own well-being for the baby's sake. At her childhood home, Elena found a modicum of peace. The familiar scent of homemade tortillas and her mother's supportive embrace brought her comfort. Each evening she took walks along the beach, listening to the rhythmic crash of waves. She ran her hands over her growing belly, whispering silent promises that she would give this child all the love and stability it deserved. Meanwhile, Julian called sporadically, leaving voicemails pleading for her return. She seldom answered. Every conversation threatened to fracture the delicate calm she was desperately trying to maintain. Some nights, she found herself rereading the email from Camilla, reliving the hurt anew. Days turned into weeks, and Julian's messages took on a more urgent tone. He confessed he was lost without her, that Artisan Link's success felt hollow if she was not at his side. He even visited San Diego once, waiting for hours outside the Garcia home. Elena watched him through a window, her heart pounding. She still felt a magnetic pull toward him. He was her husband, the father of her child, a man she had built her dreams around. Yet the memory of Camilla's email eroded her resolve to open the door. Ultimately, she stayed indoors, tears in her eyes, wishing life had taken a gentler turn. All the while, Camilla dug her claws deeper into Julian's life. She enjoyed the newfound closeness in the business sphere and pushed for more extravagant events, more press coverage. Andrew became increasingly alarmed, witnessing Julian's uncharacteristic decisions, authorizing extravagant PR budgets, underwriting lavish overseas trips that seemed more personal than corporate. Rumors buzzed through Artisan Link's corridors, employees suspecting that their boss was entangled in a messy personal saga. Andrew tried to intervene quietly, reminding Julian that the company's reputation was on the line. But Julian, consumed by the dual crises of a failing marriage and Camilla's beguiling presence, brushed Andrew aside. Eventually, news outlets picked up on the cracks in Julian's personal life. Speculative articles appeared, branding him as another tech mogul embroiled in scandal. Some even showed Camilla's social media photos, insinuating they were more than colleagues. The stress weighed heavily on Julian, and in a panicked attempt to control the narrative, he continued to rely on Camilla's expert PR maneuvers. She drafted statements that positioned Elena's absence as a routine family visit, while highlighting how Julian and Camilla were championing global philanthropic projects. The spin felt grotesque to those who knew the truth, including Andrew, who quietly seethed but struggled to protect his friend from self-destruction. One night, Elena received a frantic call from her neighbor in Palo Alto, Miss S. Beaumont. She claimed there had been smoke coming from Elena's backyard. Startled, Elena asked for details. Miss S. Beaumont described a strange scene. A tall, elegantly dressed woman was tossing something into a fire pit, ignoring local regulations that banned open fires without permits. Before the fire department arrived, the woman hurried away, leaving behind a smoldering pile. Concerned, Miss S. Beaumont investigated and discovered scorched remnants of fabric, a wedding dress. She suspected, based on the fragments of lace and beads. The shock in Miss S. Beaumont's voice was palpable, and Elena felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Racing back to Palo Alto the next day, Elena arrived at the once happy home she had shared with Julian. The yard smelled of ash, and the remains of her treasured wedding dress lay charred in the fire pit. The delicate lace that once symbolized a hopeful future was now irreparably destroyed. Elena sank to her knees, hot tears streaking her cheeks. Every memory of her wedding day flashed before her eyes, the vow they had made, the love that bloomed that afternoon at the vineyard. It was as if Camilla had torched not just a gown, but the heart of Elena's marriage, a potent gesture of malice and triumph. Sensing Elena's devastation, Miss S. Beaumont approached her gently, offering words of comfort and confirming that she had seen Camilla. Shaking with anger, Elena photographed the damage, determined to confront Julian with undeniable proof of Camilla's escalating hostility. She refused to let her heartbreak paralyze her into inaction. The dress was gone, but the child inside her remained very real. Fury combined with maternal protectiveness, forging a new kind of strength in Elena, one that made her realize she had every right to demand accountability. Julian returned from a business trip later that evening, disheveled and jet-lagged. He found Elena in the living room, the remnants of the gown laid out like damning evidence. Before he could speak, Elena hurled the photos at him, her voice shaking with rage. Look at what she did. Julian stared at the images, his face whitening. He asked if she was certain it was Camilla. Elena repeated Mistress Beaumont's eyewitness account. The horror in Julian's eyes betrayed a realization. He had been too blind or too complicit to see. Camilla was not merely a business partner, she was a threat, a time bomb that had just detonated. In the tense aftermath, Julian found himself caught between guilt and shock. He tried to apologize, stumbling over words, but the apology felt flimsy against the backdrop of such a cruel act. Elena was incandescent with fury. This was my wedding dress, Julian, the one I wore to promise you forever. She burned it while I'm pregnant with your child. Her anguish sliced through the air like a knife. For the first time, Julian realized the magnitude of the devastation he had helped set in motion. He pledged to cut ties with Camilla, to fix things with Elena. But Elena, pressing a protective hand to her belly, wasn't sure there was anything left to salvage. Camilla's reaction upon being confronted by Julian was venomous. She sneered at him, mocking Elena's heartbreak. "I was just clearing out the past," she reportedly said, boasting that she'd moved the dress herself to the backyard pit. Her contempt stunned Julian, leaving him grappling with the cold reality. He had invited a toxic force into his life, jeopardizing not only his marriage, but also the emotional well-being of his unborn child. At that moment, the glamour of Camilla's PR wizardry vanished. All that remained was a chilling recognition that his worst betrayal had led him to align with a woman who reveled in cruelty. Amid the maelstrom, Andrew Lockhart stepped in, quietly offering Elena help in filing a restraining order against Camilla. He also insisted that Artisan Link's board consider severing any remaining contracts with her. Andrew wasn't just acting on moral grounds, he feared for the company's reputation. A scandal of this magnitude could scare off potential investors, triggering financial repercussions. That said, Andrew was motivated equally by empathy for Elena, whom he regarded as a genuine, kind-hearted person who didn't deserve this anguish. Elena found solace in Andrew's support, though she maintained a cautious distance from Julian. Every day, she struggled to imagine a future in which she could trust him again. Her pregnancy advanced steadily, a tangible reminder that she had precious responsibilities. She attended ultrasound appointments alone, determined to protect herself and the child from further emotional turmoil. When nurses asked if the father would be joining, Elena offered half smiles, aware of the heartbreak behind her eyes. That heartbreak deepened when the results confirmed she was carrying a baby girl, a life she had once dreamt would be welcomed by loving, unified parents. Meanwhile, Julian's introspection grew relentless. He took a temporary leave of absence from Artisan Link, allowing Andrew to handle most executive decisions. Solitude in the otherwise empty Palo Alto house confronted him with the echoes of the life he had built and nearly ruined. Memories of simpler days invaded his thoughts, packing up old baseball cards in his bedroom, forging a future with Elena when they were college sweethearts. Now, those memories felt tainted by guilt. Even his once treasured ambitions seemed hollow. He recognized that while success had brought him wealth, it had also opened a chasm in his moral compass, and Camilla had capitalized on those vulnerabilities. Camilla, however, refused to fade quietly. Enraged by Julian's decision to cut her off, she threatened to release personal photos of them together to the tabloid press. She demanded compensation, claiming he owed her for damaging her professional credibility. With a siege mentality, Julian and Andrew scrambled to contain the fallout. Lawyers drafted cease and desist letters, while security protocols were tightened at Artisan Link's offices. Still, every day felt like treading on eggshells. The possibility that Camilla might escalate her revenge loomed large, especially after her brazen act of arson with the wedding dress. In a move that surprised everyone, Julian reached out to Elena through her parents, asking for a formal mediation session. He wanted to settle matters of their marriage, financial assets, and their unborn child's future with legal professionals present. Elena, initially resistant, ultimately agreed it was an opportunity to ensure her child's security, if nothing else. The mediation day arrived, the atmosphere thick with tension. Julian arrived looking fatigued, his typically sharp suit slightly disheveled. Elena, clad in a simple maternity dress, radiated both vulnerability and quiet strength. For hours, lawyers debated custody, property division, and the possibility of a restraining order to keep Camilla at bay. Yet amid the stoic legal formalities, a surprising moment of honesty emerged. Julian admitted he had lost his way, seduced by ambition and the thrill of external validation. He apologized for hurting Elena, acknowledging he had shattered her trust in ways he wasn't certain he could ever repair. Despite the rawness of the confession, Elena felt a subtle shift, an inkling of genuine remorse. The session ended with no definitive conclusion regarding their marriage, but they agreed on temporary arrangements for child support, medical expenses, and dividing time in the Palo Alto home. Though Elena returned to San Diego afterward, she noticed small but significant changes in Julian's behavior. He no longer attended lavish events. Instead, he remained mostly in Palo Alto, focusing on therapy and personal growth. He joined a men's accountability group where participants confronted their own faults and failings. Sometimes, late at night, he left voicemails for Elena that sounded broken, confessing he despised himself for hurting her. Elena, often listening with tears in her eyes, felt her ironclad resolve soften slightly. She didn't know if she could forgive, but she sensed a sincerity in Julian that she hadn't witnessed in months. Then came a crisis that overshadowed everything else. In her 7th month of pregnancy, Elena experienced sharp abdominal pains. She was rushed to the hospital, diagnosed with preeclampsia, a condition that can be dangerous if untreated. Miguel and Laura stayed by her side, their worried faces reflecting the seriousness of the situation. Upon hearing the news, Julian drove through the night to reach San Diego. He arrived at the hospital in wrinkled clothes, unshaven, with red-rimmed eyes that broadcast fear. He hovered at her bedside, holding her hand, softly whispering apologies and assurances that he would be there. He stayed in the waiting room through the night, dozing fitfully in a chair. Thankfully, the doctors managed to stabilize Elena's condition, advising strict bed rest and minimal stress. This health scare jolted both Elena and Julian, reminding them that life was precarious and none of their financial success or property holdings mattered if they couldn't ensure their baby's well-being. Over the course of that hospital stay, Julian's devotion manifested in practical ways. He coordinated with the nurses, fetched medications, and insisted on paying for a specialized OB-GYN consult. For the first time in a long time, Elena saw shades of the husband she had fallen in love with: protective, earnest, and gentle. Elena's recovery continued at her parents' home, where Julian offered to move in temporarily to help. Though initially hesitant, Elena recognized the practicality. She needed assistance, and her father was away at work most of the day while her mother juggled teaching commitments. Under the same roof, they navigated a fragile coexistence. Julian slept in the guest room, never overstepping his boundaries. Each morning he cooked healthy breakfasts, whisking up spinach omelets or oatmeal with blueberries. Each evening he helped Elena monitor her blood pressure and ensured she took her medication on time. Step by step, an unspoken partnership formed. In quieter moments, they discussed baby names, weighed in on nursery color schemes, and shared fleeting laughs about their college memories. Elena watched Julian cradle her belly, his eyes shining whenever he felt the baby kick. For months, she had craved this sense of unity, but bitterness still lingered. Could she trust that this wasn't just a passing phase, that he wouldn't revert to the man whose obsession with growth had caused so much damage? Therapy, they decided, might be the best chance at forging a path forward. Julian found a local counselor they both respected, and they began attending weekly sessions. Under the guidance of Dr. Marianne Fletcher, who had relocated to Southern California, temporarily due to a family matter, Julian and Elena waded through the wreckage of their broken bond. Julian explained how the lure of global recognition had fed a sense of invincibility, making him vulnerable to Camilla's flattery. Elena admitted that she sometimes wondered if her own professional successes or moral high ground pushed Julian away, though Dr. Fletcher gently pointed out that the root cause lay primarily in Julian's choices. Bit by bit, illusions fell away, exposing raw truths and creating room for a tentative kind of healing. While the emotional wounds slowly mended, Camilla still lurked in the background. News arrived that she had attempted to sue Artisan Link for alleged contractual breaches. Andrew's legal team methodically dismantled her claims, emphasizing she'd been compensated in full before she took her revengeful actions. Frustrated, Camilla made one last play, leaking intimate texts and photos to a minor gossip rag. This time, the public seemed largely uninterested. The novelty of the scandal had worn off, and readers had grown apathetic to the high society drama. Angered by the lukewarm reception and stymied by legal pushback, Camilla finally receded, her malicious influence sputtering out. By Elena's 8th month of pregnancy, she and Julian had reached a fragile yet promising truce. They communicated more openly, acknowledging the heartbreak and betrayal, but also recognizing a newfound sense of honesty. Julian continued to scale back his involvement at Artisan Link, shifting more responsibility to Andrew. He spent more hours reading about parenthood, focusing on how to support a partner who had been hurt. Elena, still uncertain about their marital future, resolved to keep evaluating his actions rather than his words. She derived comfort from the fact that their child would be born into a space where conflict had at least receded. The final stretch of pregnancy was both nerve-wracking and awe-inspiring. The baby's kicks intensified, and Elena struggled with discomfort and sleepless nights. Julian remained by her side, offering foot rubs, adjusting pillows, and preparing teas rumored to ease swelling. On quiet afternoons, they played gentle music for the baby, sharing soft smiles whenever the stirring inside Elena's belly synchronized with the melody. And though neither dared to call their dynamic fully healed, the undertone of mutual care felt real, tangible enough to carry them through the final weeks of waiting. When Elena finally went into labor, it happened in the early morning hours. She woke to sharp, rhythmic pains and realized the moment they had been preparing for had arrived. Julian roused her parents, hurriedly packed the hospital bag, and navigated the pre-dawn roads to the nearest medical center. Anxiety thrummed in the car, underscored by Elena's labored breathing and Julian's trembling hands on the steering wheel. At the hospital, doctors confirmed she was in active labor, and given her earlier complications, they kept a close watch. Julian dressed in scrubs, staying resolutely by her side, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. Labor was long and arduous, stretching into nearly 20 hours. Elena breathed through contractions, a mixture of pain and anticipation flooding her senses. Julian counted aloud, helped her with breathing exercises, and wiped the sweat from her brow. Occasionally, Elena flashed back to the heartbreak he had caused, but the rawness of this moment reminded her that people can be multifaceted, capable of both wounding and healing. When at last the baby's cries filled the delivery room, a collective exhale followed. A wave of relief and wonder washed over them. Their daughter was here, tiny, red-faced, and perfect. In the hush that followed, the doctors placed the baby girl in Elena's arms. She was swaddled in a soft blanket, blinking up at the world with wide, curious eyes. Julian stood close, tears streaming down his cheeks as he caressed the newborn's forehead. Elena felt a rush of love, a certainty that she would move heaven and earth for this child. Despite the heartbreak, the shock, the burned dress, and the betrayal, new life had a way of illuminating possibilities. As mother and father, they both sensed the magnitude of the responsibility they now shared. They named her Sophia Marisol Donovan, weaving together nods to both families. The following days at the hospital melded exhaustion with euphoria. Elena's body ached, her emotions fluctuating, but each time she gazed at Sophia, she found renewed strength. Julian assumed the role of caretaker, ensuring Elena rested, changing Sophia's diapers, and running out for whichever postpartum supplies the nurses recommended. Friends and family sent flowers and messages of support. Even Andrew dropped by, beaming as he held the tiny bundle, marveling at how this new life could symbolize hope after such tumultuous months. Returning to Elena's parents' home with Sophia, they attempted to navigate the fragile beginnings of co-parenting. Late-night feedings provided the background for raw conversations. Some nights, Elena would tear up while cradling Sophia, remembering her wedding dress consumed by flames. Other nights, Julian expressed his profound regret, emphasizing that he would devote himself to making amends, not just with words, but with tangible consistency. Their therapy sessions continued, sometimes focusing on forging a joint plan for Sophia's future. They discussed everything from how they'd handle discipline to whether they should eventually move back to Palo Alto. Through these tender, weary weeks, Elena observed Julian closely. She noticed the small gestures, how he respectfully asked, before entering her room, if she was nursing, how he quietly took on chores, and how he never once shirked from a 2am diaper change. He sought additional counseling on his own, exploring why he had given in to temptation, how stress had become a toxic driver in his life, and what boundaries he needed in the future to prevent a relapse into arrogance and betrayal. Gradually, Elena found her anger overshadowed by a cautious appreciation for his sustained efforts. One evening, as Sophia slept soundly, Julian invited Elena to sit outside beneath the starlight. With the ocean's hush in the distance, he opened a small wooden box containing mementos from their relationship, the first movie ticket stub they shared, a dried flower from her graduation, and a Polaroid snapshot from their engagement party. Stunned, Elena sifted through these tokens of a happier time. Julian then read a heartfelt note he had written, a promise to uphold the vows he once broke. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. She recalled the charred remains of her gown, but she also felt hope break through the darkness. Like dawn after a terrifying night, healing, however, wasn't a single epiphany. In the subsequent weeks, Elena wavered between moments of renewed trust and flashes of doubt. If Julian needed to travel for business, her mind dredged up images of him in foreign hotel bars with Camilla or someone like her. To help bolster faith, they established rules, open communication, location-sharing apps, and frequent video calls whenever he was away. Paradoxically, these measures strengthened their bond, proving that trust could be rebuilt piece by painstaking piece. Julian no longer grumbled about what he once would have considered an invasion of privacy. He saw it as a testament to his commitment to reconciliation. Sophia grew, blossoming into an energetic infant who giggled at the silliest faces. At times, she would wail inconsolably, and Julian's paternal instincts shone through. In those tear-filled nights, Elena found an unexpected comfort, Julian's unwavering presence. She watched him pace the living room with Sophia, humming lullabies or gently rocking her back to sleep. Parenting together forged a connection that all the drama, tears, and counseling sessions alone couldn't replicate. They were a team, united by a vulnerable life that needed both of them, reminding them daily of the stakes at hand. During one poignant therapy session, Dr. Fletcher introduced the concept of creating new memories. "Your wedding dress was stolen from you in an act of hostility," she said, addressing Elena directly, "but new symbols can replace what was lost." Touched by the idea, Julian proposed a vow renewal someday, not immediately, but when Elena felt ready. The suggestion elicited a wave of emotion in Elena, part grief for the dress she'd never get back, part cautious optimism about building something new. She didn't give him a definitive answer, but admitted that she was open to the possibility in the future. While the legal battles against Camilla had mostly cooled, scattered rumors still flickered online. Occasionally, Elena received an anonymous social media message or a link to a salacious article rehashing the scandal. These triggers threatened to open old wounds. Yet each time, Julian approached the situation with transparency and empathy, reassuring Elena there were no new secrets to hide. Ironically, the fiasco had forced him to refine his priorities, safeguarding his family. Now trumped any ambition to become the next billionaire mogul. Andrew's adept handling of artisan link gave him the freedom to put family first, a pivot that might have seemed unthinkable a year earlier. As the months rolled on, Elena gradually agreed to spend time in Palo Alto, testing the waters of returning home. The property still carried the echoes of happier times and the ghost of Camilla's destruction. Their first night back was difficult, as Elena's memories clashed sharply with the stark reality of what had transpired. But Julian had redecorated parts of the house with a soothing color scheme, replacing furniture they had once chosen jointly. The transformation was more than aesthetic, it was symbolic of turning a new leaf. He even planted a rose bush in the backyard, hoping to replace the memory of flames with something that could grow beautifully over time. In that home, they decided to host a small family gathering, inviting both the Garcias and the Donovans to welcome Sophia properly. At first, Elena felt anxious. Would the reminders of the wedding gown overshadow the event? But as guests filled the living room, cooing over Sophia, the atmosphere warmed. Laughter, clinking glasses, and heartfelt toasts echoed in the air. Richard Donovan pulled his son aside, murmuring words of pride at Julian's transformation. Laura Garcia offered a tearful hug to Elena, grateful her daughter had found a path that allowed for cautious healing, instead of living in perpetual bitterness. Bit by bit, the shadows receded. With Sophia at the center, Julian and Elena found a renewed reason to champion the philanthropic projects that first brought them together. They began fundraising to support single mothers, particularly those who had faced betrayal or domestic turmoil. Each fundraiser felt like penance for Julian and a testament to resilience for Elena. Critics sneered, claiming it was a mere PR move, but the heartfelt testimonies of the women they helped told a different story. Over time, negative perceptions were eclipsed by genuine stories of hope and empowerment. Though the memory of the burned gown could never be erased, Elena learned to view it as part of her personal evolution. In therapy, she spoke at length about how she had once idolized her marriage, believing love alone could ward off betrayal. But the painful journey taught her that relationships need constant tending, that vulnerability can't be entrusted to someone unwilling to protect it. Julian, too, recognized he had to be an active participant in sustaining trust, rather than assuming loyalty was guaranteed. This self-awareness shaped their new dynamic, forging a stronger, albeit scarred, partnership. One autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Julian gently rocked Sophia to sleep. Elena watched from a nearby armchair, a soft smile curving her lips. So much had changed. The man before her was not the same one who had condoned Camilla's presence in their lives. He was more open, more attuned to the fragility of what they had built. She couldn't pinpoint the exact moment she began to believe in him again. Maybe it was incremental, seeping in as day after day he showed up, unwavering and sincere. Finally, on an anniversary of sorts 1 year after Sophia's birth, Elena and Julian arranged a private ceremony in their newly landscaped backyard. It wasn't a vow renewal per se, but a recommitment to building a harmonious life for their daughter. Their parents gathered, as did Andrew and a close circle of friends. Elena wore a simple, elegant dress, nothing extravagant, but symbolic of a fresh start. Julian, in a subdued navy suit, read a short pledge he had composed himself. Tears glistened in their eyes, not just from the heartbreak that once consumed them, but from gratitude that they found a road back to unity. In the grand arc of their story, the burning of the wedding dress was both an ending and a beginning. It ended the illusion of a flawless marriage and forced truths into daylight. Yet it also sparked a deeper understanding between Julian and Elena about the complexities of love, the danger of unchecked ambition, and the fierce resilience they both possessed. Though the path had been riddled with betrayals and regrets, their determination to grow, guided by the needs of their daughter, uncovered something more enduring than naive perfection, a mature, tested love, forged in fire but shaped by empathy, atonement, and hope. Healing is rarely a straightforward journey. It's a winding path that demands courage, forgiveness, and the willingness to confront darkness head-on. Julian and Elena's story illustrates how betrayal can leave wounds that run deep, yet also how remorse, consistent effort, and shared responsibility can nurture second chances. Even the memory of a burned wedding dress, symbolizing a moment of searing pain, can eventually be overshadowed by new beginnings, precious family moments, and the quiet determination to rebuild. True redemption emerges when sincerity replaces empty apologies, and when daily acts of empathy and respect sustain that fragile spark of hope. If this saga of heartbreak, confrontation, and ultimate renewal resonated with you, please consider liking the video, sharing it with friends who relish dramatic, real-life tales, and subscribing to our channel for more gripping narratives. Your engagement encourages us to continue exploring raw, human stories that inspire growth and understanding. Millionaire buys Mistress luxury gifts. With pregnant wife's money, wife makes them both pay publicly. They were the couple everyone envied, wealthy, beautiful, and expecting their first child. The world saw Oliver and Charlene Cooper as the epitome of success, smiling at galas and making heartfelt speeches about family. Behind the scenes, however, a burning secret threatened to tear their carefully curated lives apart. Charlene's joy at soon becoming a mother was overshadowed by one devastating discovery. The luxury gifts her husband showered upon an elusive mistress were paid for with Charlene's own inheritance. Betrayal and scandal ignited a storm, and Charlene was prepared to fight back. But would she dare to expose Oliver, no matter the cost? Charlene Cooper was not just a socialite, she was the heiress to the Wilkerson real estate empire lineage that had solid footing in San Diego's property development sector for over 6 decades. The Wilkerson name was synonymous with old money, refined taste, and philanthropic work that spanned across California. Growing up, Charlene rarely heard a no. Her father, George Wilkerson, had doted on her, granting every request with a smile. Yet despite that gilded upbringing, Charlene carried a soft heart and a genuine desire to do good. When she met Oliver Cooper at a charity event in Los Angeles, their romance played out like a fairy tale. Oliver was a self-made businessman, known for an athletic build that hinted at his college football days and a confident smile that made him an instant crowd favorite. He had built a modest tech startup into a multi-million-dollar operation, impressing the city's financial elite. They fell in love fast, too fast, according to some cynics. But for Charlene, who believed in grand gestures and cosmic connections, their whirlwind engagement and wedding felt like destiny. Marriage brought new joys and new pressures. Charlene found out she was pregnant 6 months into their union, while Oliver celebrated the news publicly, calling himself the luckiest man on earth. Charlene began to notice subtle shifts in his demeanor. He worked later hours, made strange phone calls from the balcony, and sometimes disappeared for business trips on painfully short notice. Charlene's close friend, Laura S. Wilkerson, a distant cousin who had married into another wealthy family, tried warning her that something felt off. But Charlene didn't want to believe Laura's suspicions. Not Oliver, her dream man, the one who had vowed to protect and cherish her. He couldn't possibly betray her. Yet tiny fractures were starting to form. On the day Charlene's pregnancy test came back positive, Oliver had seemed distracted. The typical euphoria of an expecting father lasted mere hours before he slipped out for a supposed investor meeting. Over the next weeks, she saw less of him than ever. The staff at their Beverly Hills mansion began whispering behind her back. Charlene wasn't oblivious. She was heartbroken, but too afraid of the truth to dig deeper. It was her father's unexpected passing that truly opened her eyes. George Wilkerson's death left Charlene with a sizable inheritance, enough for Oliver to realize that Charlene's pockets were even deeper than he had initially understood. Charlene, unaware of the lurking vultures, told Oliver she had come into a great deal of wealth. She wanted to donate a portion to a charity that supported homeless pregnant women, but Oliver suggested they wait to ensure stable cash flow for upcoming expansions. It sounded wise at the time, so Charlene agreed to hold off her philanthropic dream. Still, something nagged at her. She discovered unread emails, unaccounted for expenses, and hush-hush charges on their joint account labeled under consultancy fees. Worst of all, she found receipts from high-end boutiques like Hermes and Cartier, extravagant purchases that she had no memory of, and certainly had never received. The final straw came when an alert from her bank informed her that an enormous amount had been withdrawn to pay for a penthouse lease in downtown Los Angeles. This transaction screamed secrecy, and Charlene's entire body trembled with dread. In the quiet hours of early morning, as she felt her unborn child gently kick within her, Charlene realized she could no longer turn a blind eye. She had to uncover the truth, even if it shattered her heart and destroyed the man she once believed was her soulmate. In the days following her discovery, Charlene felt like an actress in a film noir, her every step cautious, her every smile forced. She needed answers, but she couldn't just walk up to Oliver and accuse him blindly. Instead, she decided to use the resources at her disposal. She hired a private investigator named Jackson Miller, a discreet figure with an impeccable reputation for uncovering hidden truths among Los Angeles's high-profile elite. Jackson, with his salt and pepper stubble and calm, analytical demeanor, met her at a quiet cafe in Westwood. They spoke in hushed tones as Charlene handed him the suspicious receipts and transaction records. He asked pointed questions about Oliver's habits, the times he'd come home late, any known associates he might confide in. Charlene listened to Jackson's methodology, a plan to track Oliver's movements, record his financial dealings, and dig into phone logs if necessary. Days turned into a week. Charlene stayed up at night, mind racing, imagining the worst possible scenarios. She told herself she might be overreacting, clinging to a slim hope that the transactions were for something innocuous, secret anniversary plans, perhaps. Yet her instincts told her otherwise. When Jackson finally called, Charlene's heart nearly stopped. Meeting him again at the same cafe, she arrived early, nerves buzzing. Jackson sat across from her, an empathy in his eyes that made her realize he'd done this many times before. He slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were photographs of Oliver walking hand in hand with a striking brunette outside an exclusive boutique on Rodeo Drive. Another set of photos showed them picking out jewelry, with Oliver's arm confidently wrapped around the woman's waist. "She's Alexis Hart," Jackson said quietly, "a former runway model turned social media influencer. She has some moderate fame in the LA scene. She's known for her lavish lifestyle, usually financed by older, wealthy benefactors." Charlene's hands shook as she gripped the photos. The heartbreak was swift and brutal. She recognized the haute couture store in the background, places Oliver had never even invited her to. There's more, Jackson added gently. I discovered that the penthouse in downtown LA is in her name, but the payment route traces back to your inheritance account. I'm sorry. It was one thing to suspect a betrayal. It was another to see it displayed in undeniable proof. The pictures, the receipts, the joint property lease. Oliver was not just cheating on Charlene. He was using her father's money to do it. She felt her breath hitch, tears threatening to escape, but she forced them down. Charlene asked Jackson for everything: receipts, photos, timestamps. She paid him extra to collect any digital evidence he could find, from text messages to bank statements. If she was going to confront Oliver, she wanted an unassailable arsenal of facts. As she left the cafe, Charlene thought about her unborn child, the life forming within her. She recalled the day she had told Oliver the news. He had seemed so excited, so genuinely happy, yet how quickly that joy was overshadowed by this shameless affair. She realized she was no longer just a spurned wife. She was about to be a mother, and everything in her screamed that she had to protect her child from the toxic lies. Oliver brought into their home. That evening, Oliver returned late again. Charlene feigned sleep, carefully controlling her breathing so he wouldn't notice her tears or the heartache searing through her. As he tucked himself into bed, she felt the mattress shift with his weight, a weight that now felt heavier than ever. Deep inside, a new resolve began to form. Charlene would do whatever it took to ensure that justice was served, and she wasn't afraid to make it public if need be. Each passing day, the tension in the Cooper household intensified. Oliver acted more brazenly, sending text messages in Charlene's presence, stepping out for phone calls he labeled as urgent investor matters. A lesser woman might have confronted him immediately, brandishing evidence. But Charlene was no novice to power plays and feuds. She had observed enough corporate tussles in her father's company to know that timing was everything. In her father's study, a room lined with leather-bound books and old trophies, Charlene prepared her own strategy. Late one night, she laid out the evidence Jackson had collected: timelines, photos, and the sickening bank statements. She studied them like a general planning for war. She made sure to store duplicates safely with Laura Wilkerson, her trusted cousin, in case Oliver discovered her plans. Ironically, Oliver's behavior grew kinder during the day, as though he sensed her withdrawal. He started bringing her roses in an attempt to mask his guilt, or maybe to maintain the facade. He accompanied her to a routine prenatal checkup for the first time in weeks, acting every bit the devoted husband. The nurses at the clinic cooed over how lucky Charlene was to have such a supportive partner. The bitterness in her throat made it hard to swallow. One evening, Oliver suggested they dine at Spago in Beverly Hills, a place they often frequented during their courtship. Charlene agreed, thinking it might provide an opportunity to gauge his reactions. The hush of the Michelin-starred restaurant, the attentive waitstaff, and the candle-lit ambience all felt dreamlike. But beneath the surface, Charlene's anger simmered. Over foie gras and a meticulously prepared lamb dish, Oliver tried to discuss baby names. Charlene forced a smile, swirling her sparkling water while he sipped a vintage red. She asked him if everything was all right at work, if finances were stable. Oliver hesitated, quickly reassuring her that his tech ventures were thriving. "So we're still set on donating to that shelter project, right?" Charlene ventured, referencing her desire to support homeless, pregnant women. He coughed, face tight. "Yes, of course, but let's hold off until next quarter. I just need to ensure certain expansions go through." Charlene simply nodded, absorbing this new wave of deception. Her father's inheritance was being siphoned for Alexis Hart's penthouse and expensive tastes, yet Oliver continued to manipulate her philanthropic dreams. Back home, he went straight to shower, leaving his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. Charlene's heart pounded. She told herself she wasn't the type to invade privacy, but the truth was already out there. She was dealing with a man who had no qualms betraying her. Nerves tense, she picked up the phone, scrolling through messages. Most were harmless business chats, but one thread stood out: Alexis. She opened it, scanning a conversation that made her stomach twist. Alexis bragged about their penthouse, how the city view from the balcony at dawn was worth every cent, how she'd love a new Chanel bag to match the latest couture she'd posted on Instagram. Oliver's replies were full of heart emojis and promises to fulfill her every desire. A wave of nausea overtook Charlene, more intense than any pregnancy sickness she'd felt before. She barely managed to exit the screen and place the phone back before Oliver emerged. He kissed her on the cheek, his lips cold to her now. All she could do was force a painfully fake smile and wait for the next move. That night, sleep evaded her. Memories of happier times replayed in her mind, their honeymoon in Bora Bora, dancing under the stars at a friend's wedding. The day. Oliver surprised her with breakfast in bed just to see her smile. She clung to these fleeting good memories, mourning the reality that such love was probably never real to begin with. But she also felt the shift in her soul. The heartbreak was solidifying into anger, and the anger was transforming into an unwavering resolve. Charlene knew that if Oliver had the audacity to use her money to fund his mistress's lavish lifestyle, she owed it to her father's legacy and to herself to make them both pay. And not quietly. A few days later, Charlene found herself staring at Alexis Hart's social media profiles. The woman was stunning tall, with an enviable figure, sultry green eyes, and perfectly styled brunette waves. Her Instagram feed was a curated display of luxury, private jets, high-end restaurants, and designer clothes from Paris. She had close to 1 million followers, drawn to her constant parade of opulence and aspirational living. Charlene felt a cold detachment as she clicked through pictures of Alexis flaunting the diamond necklace Oliver had purchased. She recognized it from the receipts. A brand new photo had Alexis perched on a velvet chair inside the downtown penthouse. The skyline behind her, the caption read, "Home sweet home, filled with love and endless possibilities." She scrolled through comments from adoring fans, many praising her glamorous lifestyle and inspirational success. The irony was nauseating. Charlene thought of the heartbreak behind those shimmering surfaces, the lies fueling Alexis's brand. Charlene's father's money that was meant to be used for philanthropic work was going straight into Alexis's pockets. Deciding to gather more intel, Charlene used a fake social media account to follow Alexis's stories. She was stunned to see a recurring cameo, Oliver's hand, the same gold watch she had given him on their wedding day. Sometimes Alexis's live videos captured the muffled sound of Oliver's voice in the background. They thought they were being subtle, but for Charlene, it was a direct punch to the gut. Shortly after, Charlene discovered that Alexis was scheduled to attend a fashion event in downtown Los Angeles. It wasn't a massive public show, more a private preview for wealthy potential buyers. Charlene secured an invite through a friend, deciding it was time to see Alexis in person. The event was held in a swanky gallery, lights dimmed to highlight the models gliding down a makeshift runway. Charlene arrived in a classic black sheath dress that hugged her small baby bump discreetly. Despite her turmoil, she emanated poise, her posture straight, her chin held high. She spotted Alexis near the front row, surrounded by admirers. The mistress was elegantly dressed in a gold sequined gown, accessorized with the exact diamond necklace Charlene had seen on Instagram. Her laugh tinkled through the air as she relished the attention. Charlene approached cautiously, not wanting to cause a scene. She pretended to admire a piece of couture on display until she was near enough to hear Alexis's conversation with a friend. They gossiped about men, parties, and brand sponsorships. Alexis boasted about how her man was more generous than any sponsor she had ever encountered. Charlene's stomach twisted in revulsion, but she maintained her composure. One glance at Alexis's face, and Charlene felt an overwhelming wave of empathy for herself, for the unborn baby, for the life she had believed in. Alexis, for all her glamorous facade, seemed cunning, but not necessarily formidable. She was a symptom, not the root cause. Charlene's ire was saved mostly for Oliver, the man who had orchestrated this entire betrayal. Still, Alexis wasn't innocent. She was knowingly involved with a married man, and even flaunting the spoils of that affair. Before Charlene turned to leave, Alexis's gaze slid over her. Their eyes locked for a moment. Alexis gave Charlene a fleeting glance, perhaps seeing her as another wealthy guest, and then looked away without a hint of recognition. There was a moment's temptation for Charlene to walk up and introduce herself as Oliver's pregnant wife, but she resisted. She had bigger plans. A public meltdown at a fashion event might have satisfied a lesser impulse, but Charlene needed a carefully crafted retribution, one that would leave both Oliver and Alexis reeling in the most public way possible. When Charlene stepped out into the brisk night air, she felt the baby kick. A soothing wave of maternal protectiveness coursed through her. "Don't worry," she whispered softly, placing a gentle hand on her belly. "Mummy's got this." Fueled by the injustices she'd discovered, Charlene began assembling a legal and social strategy. She reached out to her late father's trusted attorney, Deborah T. Carmichael, an older woman whose steely gaze and impeccable knowledge of the law had guided the Wilkerson family through countless high-stakes disputes. Sitting in Deborah's glass-walled office, Charlene laid out the situation. Deborah, with her silver hair pulled into a neat chignon, listened intently, occasionally leaning forward to examine the evidence Charlene provided. After a lengthy pause, she said, "We have grounds for a significant lawsuit, embezzlement of inheritance funds, possible misappropriation, the list goes on. But Charlene, you need to be ready for a brutal fight. Oliver might not back down easily, and your personal life will be under public scrutiny." Charlene took a deep breath, feeling a tremor course through her. "I need to do this, Deborah. I won't let him or that woman continue to siphon off what my father left behind. And I need to protect my baby." Deborah nodded, taking down notes. "We'll move forward carefully. I'll assemble a forensic accounting team. In the meantime, you need to keep a low profile, act like everything is normal at home. We don't want him suspecting we're onto him yet. Once we have a solid case, we'll confront him with it." Legal measures were only part of Charlene's plan. She had a more personal vendetta. She wanted Oliver and Alexis to face the consequences on a social platform. After all, Oliver thrived on maintaining a polished public image as a philanthropic millionaire, and Alexis, her entire career hinged on her glamorous, envy-inducing social media persona. Charlene resolved to strike them where it would hurt the most, in public reputation. A stroke of inspiration led Charlene to her father's old diaries, which she discovered tucked away in a carved mahogany chest. George Wilkerson had meticulously recorded notes about people he did business with, favors, secrets, alliances. Reading through them, Charlene was reminded how alliances could be forged or broken with a single phone call. She discovered a longtime ally of her father's, Mark Remington, a prominent journalist with the Los Angeles Tribune. Mark and George had teamed up once to expose a crooked real estate mogul. The subsequent scandal had garnered front-page headlines, and Mark owed his career boost to George. Charlene wasn't sure if Mark would remember her, but she decided to find out. She called the Tribune, leaving a message explaining that she was George Wilkerson's daughter and needed to speak with Mark. Within an hour, she got a call back. Mark's voice was warm with reminiscence as he recounted how much her father had supported him. After exchanging pleasantries, Charlene offered Mark an exclusive story that would expose betrayal, financial misuse, and the lavish downfall of a prominent tech millionaire. Mark hesitated. "This is about Oliver Cooper, isn't it? I've seen him around, and he's something of a rising star in the business section. Are you certain you want to go public?" Charlene's throat tightened. "I'm certain, but I need your promise that this will be handled with integrity. This isn't just gossip, it's about justice and ensuring no one else gets hurt." Mark agreed to meet in person, requesting a time and place. They settled on a discreet cafe near the Tribune's office. As Charlene hung up, she felt a surge of adrenaline. It was one thing to plan revenge quietly, but quite another to involve a well-known journalist who had the power to break a career. In those days of preparatory hush, Charlene found small comfort in her unborn child's growing kicks. She allowed herself moments of calm, sometimes drifting to the nursery she had started decorating. She would stand there in the soft glow of pastel paint, letting her imagination wander to a future free from Oliver's deceit. Yet every time she saw Oliver, her resolve hardened. One late night, she heard him chatting on the phone in hushed tones, finishing with "I miss you too," before ending the call. The next morning, he cheerfully asked if she needed anything for her prenatal vitamins. The audacity left her speechless, but it also reaffirmed her mission. She would not remain a helpless victim. Oliver Cooper was not a man who ever considered himself the villain. Born to modest means in Sacramento, he had clawed his way up, starting with a partial football scholarship that got him through college. When an injury ended his sports dreams, he discovered a knack for sales and networking. He joined a tech startup, impressing investors with his bold pitches and near-fearless approach. Over time, he built his own enterprise, Cooper Innovations, attracting venture capital, forging partnerships, and eventually becoming a darling of the tech press. He prided himself on defying expectations. To Oliver, life was a game of strategy, and he believed that moral lines were negotiable if the end justified the means. Meeting Charlene Wilkerson seemed like the perfect alignment of business and pleasure. He was genuinely drawn to her kindness and sophistication, but he was also captivated by the resources she possessed. Their relationship skyrocketed his social standing. Her father's connections opened doors that would have remained locked for years. However, Oliver's appetite for success proved insatiable. He was enthralled by the power he wielded and the attention he could command, especially from women who admired his status. The day he set eyes on Alexis Hart at a high-end nightclub, desire and opportunity collided. He was bored with the predictability of marriage, or so he told himself, and Alexis represented the spark he craved. But Alexis demanded more than mere attention. She wanted designer bags, exclusive penthouse living, and the feeling of being kept by a wealthy lover. Initially, Oliver believed he could handle the financial burden. His ventures were doing well, after all. But soon, Alexis's cravings escalated. She wanted a place bigger than her old condo. She wanted jewelry that would stand out on her Instagram feed. Oliver found ways to sneak money out of joint accounts, forging invoices and funneling funds. When the news of Charlene's inheritance landed, Oliver saw a stopgap solution to maintain Alexis's extravagant tastes until he could close a few major tech deals. It was a gamble, but in his mind, he had it under control. He had no qualms about forging Charlene's signature on certain transactions or convincing her that the funds were tied up in essential expansions. He believed Charlene would never suspect. She was gentle, trusting, and occupied with her pregnancy. Little did he know, behind Charlene's calm demeanor lay the iron will of George Wilkerson's daughter. One afternoon, as he sipped a whiskey at a private lounge, Oliver scrolled through Alexis's latest Instagram photos. His chest puffed with pride at the thought of having such a dazzling woman by his side, albeit in secret. Alexis's messages demanded a new Hermes Birkin bag she had spotted. Oliver texted back with reassurance, hoping she'd remain satisfied for a while longer. Within a few minutes, Charlene called. Oliver almost didn't answer, but something in her voicemail, "We need to talk about something important," made him pick up. She requested he come home early for dinner, sounding sweet yet firm. Oliver felt a prickle of uncertainty. Charlene rarely insisted on altering his schedule, but he brushed it off, thinking perhaps she wanted to share some baby-related development. Oliver had no clue that the carefully laid trap was about to snap shut around him. He still believed he was the master of his own destiny, orchestrating two separate worlds without consequence. What he failed to realize was that his illusions were hanging by a thread, and Charlene held the scissors. Charlene decided the moment had come to set her plan in motion. With Deborah T., Carmichael's legal advice, and the mountain of evidence courtesy of Jackson Miller's investigations, she was ready to confront Oliver. She'd been hiding her fury behind sweet smiles for too long, and every day that passed felt like a betrayal of her own soul. It was a Monday evening when Oliver walked into their Beverly Hills mansion, expecting a quiet dinner. Instead, he found Charlene sitting in the living room, dressed in a simple but elegant navy blue blouse, her hair pulled back, her expression unreadable. On the table before her lay two neatly stacked piles of papers and a laptop. Oliver frowned, loosening his tie. "What's all this?" he asked, forcing a chuckle. "You look serious." Charlene gestured for him to sit. "We need to talk, Oliver. Please." He obliged, though she could see the flicker of unease in his eyes. Charlene opened the laptop, revealing photos of Oliver and Alexis shopping together, arms wrapped intimately. A slideshow advanced to screenshots of text messages, receipts from her inheritance account, and, finally, the penthouse lease documents. She didn't have to say a word. The evidence spoke for itself. Oliver's face went pale. He attempted a laugh, nervous and hollow. What is this? Where did you get these?" Charlene's voice was steady, surprising even herself. "That's not the question you should be asking. You should be asking why you thought you could use my father's money to fund your mistress's lavish lifestyle." Oliver blanched, standing up in an attempt to regain control. "Let's calm down. This is a misunderstanding." Charlene rose too, a hand instinctively resting on her pregnant belly. "Don't you dare feed me that lie. I've traced every cent you took from my inheritance. I've hired a private investigator. My lawyer, Deborah Carmichael, has drawn up the legal consequences of your actions. Everything is right there." She pointed at the second stack of documents that outlined a potential lawsuit for fraud, embezzlement, and breach of trust. Oliver tried to speak, but he choked on his words, finally managing a feeble apology. "I never meant to hurt you. I just needed time. I was going to replace the money." His excuses sounded pitiful, even to himself. Charlene's eyes flashed with anger. "My father's money was meant for charity, Oliver. And if that wasn't enough, you brought another woman into our marriage. I'm pregnant with your child, and this is how you repay me." He stepped forward, arms outstretched, but Charlene recoiled. "Don't," she warned, her tone sharper than ever before. For a moment, guilt and panic flooded his face. He started to stammer. "We can fix this. I'll leave her, pay you back." It was just a mistake, a fling. Charlene's hollow laugh cut through his words. "A fling that cost me millions of dollars and my trust. Don't you dare trivialize this." Oliver looked around helplessly, scanning the room like a trapped animal. He saw the unwavering determination in Charlene's posture and realized how dire his situation truly was. She wasn't the naive, trusting heiress he'd married. She was George Wilkerson's daughter, a woman with the resources and willpower to ruin him. Before Oliver could plead further, Charlene handed him an envelope. Inside was a formal letter from Deborah's firm, outlining Charlene's conditions: immediate return of all misused funds, complete severance from Alexis Hart, and an agreement that if Oliver didn't comply, Charlene would file a lawsuit and expose him publicly. Oliver's hands shook as he read. Beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. He tried to muster defiance, but the weight of Charlene's evidence and the potential fallout was immense. If the press got hold of this, his business could collapse, investors might bail, and his once venerated public image would be shattered. Swallowing hard, he finally spoke in a subdued voice. "I'll do what it takes. Just give me a chance to fix this." Charlene didn't respond, her glare cold enough to freeze him in place. Then she stood, taking one final look at the man she once believed was her life partner. Without another word, she left the room, the quiet click of her heels echoing in Oliver's ears. The once invincible entrepreneur sank into the nearest chair, realizing the gravity of what he had done. His illusions were no more. The facade lay in pieces around him. Word traveled fast in certain circles, especially among the wealthy. Alexis Hart sensed something was off the moment. Oliver declined to accompany her to a high-profile after-party. He had always jumped at the chance to show her off, to revel in the attention their illicit romance garnered. Now he was distant, texting her curt replies that lacked his usual over-the-top affection. Their next face-to-face encounter took place at the penthouse Oliver funded. Alexis had arranged a private chef to cook dinner, hoping to create a romantic ambiance. She lounged in a silk robe, sipping champagne while she waited. But when Oliver arrived, tense and brooding, the sparks she usually felt fizzled into concern. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice sultry but tinged with worry. Oliver paced the room, ignoring the tantalizing smell of garlic and rosemary wafting from the kitchen. He finally turned to her. "Charlene found out," he said simply, face drawn. Alexis's eyes widened. She'd always feared this day might come, but she had grown complacent, believing Oliver had it all under control. "So what? You can smooth things over, right?" He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "It's worse than that. She's threatening legal action and public exposure. I could lose everything, my company, my reputation. She wants the money back, Alexis. Millions of dollars." Alexis's mouth fell open. She was not just an idle bystander in this drama. If Oliver's finances were frozen or compromised, she'd lose the lifestyle she'd grown to love. "What about me?" she demanded, voice sharp with panic. "We have a lease here. Is she shutting that down too?" Oliver nodded grimly. "Yes, she wants me to cut ties immediately." Alexis's lip curled in frustration. She had no intention of giving up her penthouse or the benefits she reaped from being Oliver's mistress. She'd invested time in him, in their brand of secrecy, and she wasn't about to watch it vanish. "Then fight her," Alexis snapped. "Hire the best lawyers. She can't just ruin your life because of a marital spat." Oliver laughed bitterly. "Marital spat? You don't understand. She has evidence of misappropriating her inheritance. She can press charges. The court will side with her, and I'll be labeled a thief." Alexis's expression hardened. Fear and anger churned within her. "You told me you had this under control, that your marriage was more of a facade, and you could get the money whenever you wanted." He flinched. "It's complicated, Alexis. Charlene's father was a powerful man, and she inherited not just money, but influence. People are lining up to help her, and she's pregnant with my child. Even the optics of that are damning for me." Something unreadable flickered in Alexis's eyes, perhaps a momentary guilt. Then, just as swiftly, it was replaced by self-preservation. "What do you plan to do? Beg her forgiveness? Maybe you should just divorce her. Then we can finally be together openly." Oliver glared at her, frustration welling up. "Don't you get it? A divorce would be a nightmare right now. She'd drag me through the courts, and I'd lose all support from my investors. They don't want to be associated with scandal." And with the baby on the way, she'd get sympathy and I'd be a pariah. Alexis sighed, sinking onto the tufted velvet couch. Fine, you handle the legal mess. But don't expect me to sit around waiting. I have to protect my own interests. Oliver stared at her, realization dawning that Alexis's devotion was as conditional as her lifestyle was extravagant. He had hoped for support, maybe an embrace that would ease his anxiety. Instead, her cold practicality only underscored the fact that she was with him for what he could provide. I can't keep funding everything, he admitted, voice weary. Charlene wants the money returned. I'll try to stall, but eventually I have to close deals to pay back what I took. Alexis's expression darkened at the suggestion that the money flow might stop. She rose, crossing her arms. You'd better figure out a way to fix this, Oliver. I'm not going back to some dingy apartment or giving up the lifestyle I've built. If you let her win, you'll lose me too. Her ultimatum hit him like a slap. He realized that in his quest for success and pleasure, he'd bound himself to two demanding women, one with legitimate moral and legal standing, and the other with a voracious appetite for luxury. As Alexis retreated to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her, Oliver sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. In that moment, he felt the walls closing in. There was no easy path forward. If he complied with Charlene, Alexis would likely walk away, leaving him high and dry. If he fought Charlene, he risked public disgrace and possible legal ruin. Faced with these impossible choices, Oliver finally understood that his empire built on lies and grand illusions was on the brink of collapse. While Oliver floundered, Charlene assembled a circle of support that fortified her resolve. She confided in Laura Wilkerson, her trusted cousin and friend, who offered emotional solace and practical help. Laura connected Charlene with a public relations consultant, Samantha Layton, well known for handling high-profile scandals. Samantha had a polished demeanor, her every word measured as she addressed Charlene's concerns in her sleek downtown office. Your story is compelling, Samantha noted, scanning the summary of Charlene's predicament. A pregnant heiress, betrayed by her husband, who used her inheritance to spoil a mistress. It's headline gold, but we must manage the narrative carefully, or it could spiral out of control. Charlene nodded. I don't want to be seen as vindictive, but I need justice, and I won't stand by while my father's legacy is exploited for someone else's greed. Samantha offered a small smile. Understood. We'll position you as a woman standing up for her unborn child's future and safeguarding charitable interests. This is about more than revenge, it's about principle. Meanwhile, Deborah Carmichael was finalizing the legal angle. She arranged a meeting with Oliver's lawyers to present Charlene's demands: immediate repayment of the stolen funds, a transfer of any assets purchased with her inheritance back to her name, and a formal separation agreement that protected Charlene from any further financial wrongdoing. If Oliver refused, a lawsuit would proceed. Charlene was also preparing for her clandestine meeting with Mark Remington, the journalist. She knew that if Oliver tried to strong-arm her or manipulate public sentiment, she would have an ally in the press. Late one afternoon, she slipped on a simple beige trench coat, pulled her hair into a low ponytail, and headed to a small cafe near the Los Angeles Tribune's office. Mark Remington was already seated at a corner table, nursing a cappuccino. He stood when he saw her, greeting her with a warm handshake. Charlene recognized the lines of age and experience around his eyes, a testament to his years in investigative journalism. They spoke in subdued tones, Charlene handing him sanitized versions of the evidence photos, financial documents, text message screenshots. Mark skimmed through them, occasionally raising an eyebrow. "This is thorough," he remarked. "If this goes public, Oliver Cooper's reputation will take a massive hit." possibly irreversible. Charlene exhaled shakily. I'm aware. I don't relish destroying him, but he left me no choice. I won't let him or his mistress keep benefiting from my father's legacy. Mark leaned in, eyes earnest. I'll do this story justice. I owe your father a lot, and I respect you for how you're handling this. Just be prepared. Once it's out there, you can't control every headline. Charlene nodded. She knew the risk, but it was one she was willing to take. In the days that followed, Charlene continued her routine as if nothing were amiss. She attended prenatal yoga sessions, visited her doctor, and occasionally appeared at society luncheons. Yet beneath the surface calm, she was orchestrating the downfall of the man who had wronged her. Oliver sensed her quiet determination, and it made him restless. He spent hours on the phone with potential investors, desperate to secure funds to repay Charlene. But rumors started swirling that Oliver Cooper was in financial trouble, and potential backers grew wary. Alexis grew impatient too. She posted cryptic messages on social media about undying love, turning into betrayal, likely aimed at stirring sympathy. But the more her followers asked questions, the more Alexis retreated into cryptic silence, perhaps realizing that Charlene's wrath could explode any day now. And so the stage was set. Charlene stood, strong and resolute, armed with legal, PR, and journalistic firepower. Oliver flailed between desperation and denial, while Alexis feared losing her golden goose. The world outside remained oblivious for the moment, but soon the carefully constructed illusions would crumble in a blaze of public scandal. Charlene could almost taste the retribution, and she knew it would be served cold. The unraveling began on a crisp Wednesday morning when the Los Angeles Tribune ran a front-page teaser: high-profile tech entrepreneur accused of misusing wife's inheritance. Though the article did not name Oliver directly, those in elite circles recognized the clues pointing to Cooper innovations. Within hours, social media started buzzing. The cryptic references matched rumors of Oliver's recent desperation to secure funds, and the name Charlene Wilkerson Cooper trended on local Twitter feeds. Paparazzi camped outside their mansion, trying to capture the first shots of the wealthy heiress at the center of the scandal. Oliver woke to a barrage of phone calls and texts from colleagues, investors, and even relatives who had read the story. He rushed downstairs, where Charlene calmly sipped tea at the dining room table, a copy of the Los Angeles Tribune laid out next to her plate. "What did you do?" he demanded, voice hoarse. She met his gaze unflinching. "I gave them the truth," she said simply. He inhaled sharply. "You've put my entire company at risk. Do you know how this makes me look?" Charlene stood, her pregnant belly prominent beneath her blouse. "Yes, I do. And you're the one who put us here. Now it's time to face the consequences." Oliver shook his head in disbelief. Before he could say more, his phone rang again. He retreated to his study, slamming the door behind him. Charlene could hear his muffled voice, shouting something about media spin and damage control. By midday, a second wave of online articles appeared, some even naming Alexis Hart as a possible mistress. Alexis's Instagram followers flooded her posts with questions. Instead of responding, Alexis turned off comments, fueling further speculation. Soon, national gossip columns picked up the story, hungry to showcase a salacious tale of betrayal and scandal. Charlene's phone buzzed incessantly with messages of support from friends and family, plus the occasional harassing call from curious strangers. Laura Wilkerson came by to check on Charlene, offering to help manage the chaos. Meanwhile, Samantha Layton, Charlene's PR consultant, was busy issuing statements. Mrs. Cooper prioritizes her unborn child's well-being and is cooperating fully with legal proceedings to reclaim misused funds. She remains committed to charitable initiatives, despite the challenging circumstances. Investors in Cooper Innovations began to panic. Some threatened to pull out if Oliver did not address the allegations immediately and clear his name. Desperate to salvage his company, Oliver arranged a press conference for the following day at a luxury hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Charlene stayed silent that evening, ignoring Oliver's attempts to discuss strategy. She retired to the nursery, gently running her hands over the crib she had picked out weeks ago, her mind replaying the chain of events that led them to this precipice. Though she felt a twinge of sorrow for the public nature of the scandal, her conviction held firm Oliver had to be held accountable. That night, the media frenzy exploded. Popular talk shows hosted panels discussing the riches to rags angle, speculation about prenups, and the morality of Oliver's actions. On one late-night show, a comedian quipped, "Misusing your pregnant wife's inheritance to fund a mistress?" In LA, that's like trying to swim with sharks while bleeding. Bad idea. Charlene went to bed early, telling herself that tomorrow would be the beginning of the end. As she switched off the lights, she felt the baby kick and whispered a promise to her child, "This chaos won't define us. I'll make sure of it." Outside, the press huddled in clusters, cameras flashing whenever a light turned on in the windows. Inside, the once luxurious fortress felt like a cage of secrets and sorrow. And somewhere across town, Alexis Hart watched her phone, dread filling her heart as she realized she was not merely a bystander, she was about to be publicly named and shamed as well. The next morning, Oliver stood behind a podium in the opulent ballroom of the Regency Hotel. He wore a tailored suit, trying to project calm authority, yet his hands shook as he adjusted the microphone. Rows of reporters, photographers, and camera crews filled the space, waiting to broadcast his statement live. Charlene opted not to attend in person. Instead, she watched the live stream from the comfort of her father's study, with Laura by her side. It wasn't her place to shield Oliver from the consequences. This was his mess. Clearing his throat, Oliver began, "I'd like to address the recent allegations circulating in the media. First, I want to make it clear that I have the utmost respect for my wife, Charlene Cooper, and her family legacy. Any suggestion that I have intentionally misappropriated funds is premature and not based on the full facts." His speech was carefully scripted, peppered with phrases like misunderstanding and temporary financial reallocation. He dodged direct mention of Alexis Hart, only vaguely referring to private matters that do not concern the public. Reporters unleashed a flurry of questions. "Is it true you used your wife's inheritance for personal gain? Have you been unfaithful to your wife, who is pregnant with your child? What about the penthouse property leased in Alexis Hart's name?" Oliver's calm facade began to crack. He tried to deflect, insisting that no wrongdoing occurred, but the wave of skepticism was overwhelming. The final straw came when a tenacious reporter from a local affiliate stood up and said, "We have documents showing your signature authorizing transfers from your wife's inheritance to fund the lease of Miss Hart's penthouse." "Care to comment?" Oliver stammered. The entire ballroom seemed to collectively hold its breath. Finally he mumbled, "I have no comment on Miss Hart's personal finances." Camera shutters clicked frantically, capturing the moment. Online, viewers mocked him on social media for his non-denial. Memes sprouted, picturing Oliver's sweaty brow next to the tagline, "No comment." From the study, Charlene watched, feeling an odd mix of triumph and sadness. This was the father of her child, after all, and seeing him humiliated publicly was bittersweet. But she reminded herself of the betrayal, the stolen money, and the mistress. Actions had consequences, and Oliver was finally facing his. After the press conference, Oliver fled the hotel amidst jeering questions. His phone lit up with missed calls and messages from business partners. He tried calling Charlene, but she didn't pick up. When she finally checked her messages, there was one tearful voicemail from Oliver, begging for a chance to talk. She ignored it, letting her lawyer Deborah handle all formal communications. News coverage that evening was brutal, with every network dissecting Oliver's shaky performance. Some panelists predicted a swift downfall for Cooper Innovations. Stocks tied to his ventures took a hit as anxious investors bailed. Meanwhile, tabloids emblazoned images of Alexis, dredging up her modeling past and speculation about her connection to Oliver. At a small bar on the outskirts of town, Alexis Hart watched the broadcast with a sinking feeling. A friend tapped her shoulder sympathetically, but Alexis shrugged it off, her mind whirling. She realized her chance of forging a respectable public image was slipping away. She cursed Oliver for his failure to control the narrative. In the hours that followed, Charlene received a supportive call from Mark Remington at the Los Angeles Tribune. "Well, that was quite the show," he remarked. "Are you satisfied?" Charlene sighed. "It's not over yet, but this is the start of him taking responsibility. Thank you for exposing the story with integrity, Mark." He wished her well, and Charlene ended the call, sinking back into the leather chair in her father's study. Laura squeezed her hand, offering a gentle smile. "You did the right thing," Laura said. "Your father would be proud." Exhausted, Charlene allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. She knew she was forever changed by this ordeal, but as she stroked her belly, she silently vowed that her child's life would be built on honesty, love, and dignity, everything Oliver had so woefully betrayed. In the wake of Oliver's disastrous press conference, Alexis Hart found herself at the center of a spiraling scandal. Hounded by trolls and abandoned by sponsors, she hid in the penthouse, watching her once glamorous life crumble. She repeatedly called Oliver, but he offered no solutions. His resources were now diverted to crisis management. Desperate, Alexis agreed to an exclusive tabloid interview, hoping to salvage her reputation. Her plan backfired spectacularly. She stumbled over her lies, contradicting herself on camera and exposing how deeply she'd known about Charlene's inheritance. The public turned on her, mocking her attempts at portraying herself as a victim. Brands cut ties, and her agent dropped her altogether. Realizing she had lost her golden ticket, Alexis packed up the designer items Oliver had bought her. With a final, scornful text to him, "I'm done. Good luck with your mess." She fled Los Angeles, leaving behind a ruinous legacy as the mistress who fell from grace. With Alexis gone, Oliver found himself cornered, facing a wife armed with an army of attorneys and a brewing lawsuit that threatened to dismantle his entire empire. Deborah T. Carmichael finalized the formal complaint, detailing every instance of financial misappropriation. The documents demanded full restitution, punitive damages, and legal fees. Charlene sent Oliver a final ultimatum through Deborah: settle out of court under these terms or face a very public trial. The settlement terms included 1. Immediate transfer of any remaining misused funds back to Charlene's account. 2. Liquidation of certain Cooper Innovations assets to repay her inheritance. 3. A public apology and acknowledgement of wrongdoing. 4. An agreement that Charlene would maintain full custody of their unborn child, with Oliver having supervised visitation unless future court orders stipulated otherwise. Oliver balked at the custody demand, but even he recognized he had no leverage left. His name was mud in the media, investors were distancing themselves, and every day brought new rumors about potential lawsuits from minority shareholders who felt misled. At a final negotiation session, Oliver arrived looking haggard, dark circles under his eyes. His once confident posture deflated. Charlene sat across a mahogany table, Deborah by her side. The tension in the air was palpable. "What do you want from me?" Oliver asked, voice hollow. "My company is in shambles. I can't magically produce millions overnight." Charlene stared at him, remembering the charming suitor who once vowed eternal devotion. That man was gone, replaced by a shell. "Figure it out," she replied coldly. "Sell your shares. Downsize operations, do whatever it takes. I'm not responsible for your choices." Oliver's eyes flickered with a mixture of shame and desperation. He turned to Deborah, attempting to negotiate the custody terms, but Charlene stood firm. "My child will not be subjected to your toxic lifestyle. Earn the right to be in their life again." Deborah slid the settlement papers across the table. Oliver took a shaky breath and scribbled his signature. The weight of finality descended on the room. From her seat, Charlene tried to steady the tremor in her hand. She had envisioned a different future, a family united, love thriving, but life had taken a cruel turn. Outside the firm's office, paparazzi snapped photos, capturing Oliver's defeated expression. He muttered a short no comment before ducking into a waiting car. Charlene followed after some moments, her composure intact. She had just won a crucial victory, but her heart felt heavy. Still, she reminded herself that this step was necessary to secure her baby's future. The stolen inheritance would be reclaimed, Oliver would be forced to atone, and the public had seen the truth of his betrayal. As the legal dust began to settle, Charlene could see the road ahead, one that involved single motherhood, healing, and rebuilding her life free from deceit. Now only the final chapter remained, turning this painful saga into something meaningful, not just for her, but for the causes her father cared about. Charlene intended to ensure that out of the ashes of this scandal, a brighter, more hopeful legacy would shine. With the legal battles behind her, Charlene left the Beverly Hills mansion, unable to face its haunting memories. Instead, she found comfort in a smaller Ocean View penthouse. There, she poured her reclaimed inheritance into something meaningful, the George Wilkerson Sanctuary for Mothers. Housed in a restored downtown building, it offered safe shelter, medical care, and job training for expectant women in need. At the sanctuary's opening ceremony, Charlene stood before a modest crowd. Months of scandal and heartbreak had led her here, but she felt more empowered than ever. She publicly honored her late father's legacy, vowing that the foundation would extend hope to those most vulnerable. Oliver Cooper, left reeling by his downfall, sold off parts of Cooper Innovations to repay what he'd taken. He sent Charlene a letter admitting regret and asked to see their child someday. She didn't respond immediately. Trust would take time to rebuild, if ever. Eventually, Charlene welcomed a healthy baby girl, Georgina, named after her father. Holding her daughter in the hospital's soft morning light, Charlene was filled with renewed hope. She had survived betrayal and public scrutiny, emerging with a clear purpose to raise her child in a world guided by honesty, compassion, and her father's enduring spirit. And so ends the tumultuous tale of wealth, betrayal, and justice. Charlene's world was turned upside down when her husband, Oliver, funneled her inheritance into a luxury lifestyle with his mistress, Alexis. Yet, through heartbreak, legal warfare, and a media storm, Charlene found her resolve. She reclaimed not just her father's legacy, but her own power and dignity. Oliver and Alexis paid the ultimate price, public humiliation and shattered reputations, forced to face the consequences of their selfish desires. Charlene emerged stronger, dedicating her restored fortune to a cause that honored her father's memory. Even as a single mother, she found purpose in nurturing new life, her baby girl, Georgina, and helping vulnerable mothers in need. This story reminds us that while betrayal can strike like a thief in the night, resilience and truth can vanquish even the darkest lies. If you found this real-life drama gripping, please like, share, and subscribe to support more captivating stories on this channel. Share Charlene's journey, and let's inspire others to stand up for justice. Your support helps us continue creating compelling content.